I was having lunch with a friend and her friend was like, "Do you have any hobbies?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have 100 million." And she was like, "Oh, well, oh, never mind." And I was like, "Oh, why?" And she wanted to talk about how her and none of her friends had hobbies. I'm like, "I bet you do have hobbies. Do you like to watch, reality TV? Do you like any?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I love that." I'm like, "Why is for men they can watch football and that's a hobby, but for women that's not
Precisely.
a hobby?" I'm like, "That's ridiculous. Like that's your hobby. That's fine." And she kind of was like, "I've never thought about it that way." And I'm like, boys are allowed to do so many of the things that girls aren't and it be a hobby.
Totally. And the reflex to invalidate it as a hobby is so telling. And
So true.
not to bring up the Barbie movie in this conversation, which would be the obvious and cliche thing to bring up, but I did have a moment of like, oh, boys don't have to put away their dolls. They don't have to put away their cars and trains. They can like them well into adulthood. But I think there was a lot of closure in it for women because like you don't really remember the day you put the dollhouse
Yeah.
away, but there was a time when you were too old and it wasn't mature. It wasn't, you had to grow up, you had to move on.
Yeah.
And our interests are not only trivialized for being feminine coded, but also for being too youthful and frivolous. I think that there's like such a strong attachment a lot of people have to things like Barbie or American Girl dolls or the things you see go viral that we don't have a lot of closure with because we're just kind of forced to move on from them. I love taking back the power of like enjoying that stuff, whether in real time or nostalgically. Because like, who's telling you that it's not cool or not interesting or doesn't have value? Like nobody and everybody. It's a little bit confusing.
It is. That's the war in our own brains.